Do you get confused about how to expand or multiply out brackets? Let's get rid of that confusion right here, right now. I'll show you how a pot of honey can help you tackle bracket questions of any shape and size. Today, we're going to learn a simple, foolproof method to multiply out brackets. This video assumes you already know how to collect like terms together. If you don't, then just check out our Algebra Basics video to pick up those key skills. When we talk about multiplying out brackets or expanding brackets, we're actually just saying, let's get rid of the brackets by multiplying everything together. If we're going the other direction and creating sets of brackets, that's called factorizing and is covered in another of our algebra videos. In fact, if you want to know the fancy pants mathemachicken language for this, it's called the distributive property of maths. So if we've got a factor outside a bracketed group, we can distribute that factor to each item in the group and get rid of the brackets. And as mentioned, factorizing is using the same property to take a factor out and put things back into a bracketed group again. Just realise that these formulae are still exactly the same and equivalent to each other. All we've done is rearrange them a little bit. Right, end of the fancy pants stuff. Switching back to multiplying out brackets. The great news is, if you can multiply two things together, then expanding brackets will be simple. All you need is a method. There are many methods out there, but I'm going to show a universal simple method that works for all questions. A method that sticks. In fact, it's so sticky, I call it the sticky finger method. Speaking of sticky, I read a good book about glue the other day. Once I picked it up, I just couldn't put it down again. But first off, why are there so many methods out there? Well, that's because often this topic is taught across different question types, with a different method for tackling each. For instance, questions that look like this might be called single factor questions, because we only have a single factor outside the brackets. This next type is very popular and might be called a quadratic question, because we are often left with a quadratic formula after expanding. For these question types, you might have heard of the FOIL method, or the eyebrows method, or some others. But then you'd need yet another method for brackets that have 3 or more items inside them, like this. Lots of methods to remember, lots of places where you can go wrong. If we take a step back and look at these questions, in all of them we are just multiplying one chunk by another chunk, and all we need is to make sure that everything in the first chunk is multiplied by everything in the second chunk, and that's where our sticky finger comes in. Let's use a single factor example, 5 times x minus 4. In this method, your index finger on your non-writing hand becomes your sticky finger. Imagine you've just dipped it into a jar of honey, because this is such a sweet, sweet method. Your sticky finger only ever points to the first chunk, so just think sticky finger first, if you want to remember this. Fingers are great, they're so reliable, you can always count on them. Right, put your sticky finger underneath the first item in the first chunk. There's only one item here, so that's easy. Now, using your pen or pencil, point to the first item in the right-hand chunk, in this case, x. Multiply these two things together. That's 5 times x, which is 5x. Move your pen to the next item in the right chunk and multiply the two things together. Now we have 5 times minus 4, which is minus 20. There are no more items in the right chunk, so we are finished and can take our sticky finger away. We have 5x minus 20, which cannot be simplified any further. Now let's try a slightly harder one. X minus 3 times x minus 4. A different looking question, but the same sticky method. Let's put our sticky finger under the first item in the first chunk, in this case x. And again, let's use our pen as a pointer to go through all the items in the right chunk. First, we have x times x, which is x squared. Then our pen moves along to -4. And remember, the plus or minus sign is part of the item. So x times by -4 is -4x. Our pen has now reached the end of the second chunk, so we move our sticky finger to the next item in the left chunk and go through the right chunk again. Now we have our sticky finger on -3, and our pen points to x. -3 times x is -3x. Let's move our pen along, and -3 times by -4 is +12, because we've got a minus times a minus, which becomes a plus. We now have our expanded terms and no brackets. The final stage is to collect like terms together. We have -4x here and -3x here, so these combine to give -7x, and our formula is finished. Here's a good check you can do. When we multiply two chunks together, the number of items in our initial answer, that is before we start collecting the like terms, should be the number of items in the first chunk multiplied by the number in the second chunk. So for our first question, we had 1 times 2, which is 2 items. And for our second question, we had 2 times 2, which is 4 items. This matches the number of items in our initial answer, which shows we've been doing something right all the way through. Right, to prove this method is easy and works for all questions, I'm not going to bother giving you a simple example. We're just going to go and jump straight into a big one, and you are going to have a proper go at it. Here it is. Remember, this is a longer question, but using our sticky finger method, it shouldn't necessarily be a harder question. Using our quick check, with 3 items in the first chunk and 4 items in the second chunk, we would expect our initial answer to have 12 terms. You could even give yourself 12 spaces to write them. And a final tip. Remember, the plus or minus sign is part of the item. Right, that's enough tips. Have a crack at it, and when you're finished, hit the thumbs up and then watch the rest of this video. Pause it now. Okay people, you ready to check your answers? Dip that finger in some honey and let's get sticking. It might look complicated, but we have a simple system. Our first chunk has 3 items, so let's stick our finger on the first and point our pen to the first item in the right chunk. So first we have x times x, which is x squared. Move our pen along, we now have x times minus y. And sorry for repeating myself, this is the last time, but remember, the plus or minus sign is part of the item. This gives us minus xy. Next is x times 3xy, which is 3x squared y. And finally, we have x times minus 4, which is minus 4x. We've got to the end of our right chunk, so we need to move our sticky finger along and go through it again. Our sticky finger is now on minus y. Going through the right chunk, we have minus y times by x, which is minus yx. We then have minus y times minus y. The 2 minuses make a plus, and this gives us positive y squared. Minus y times by 3xy is minus 3xy squared. And at the end of the chunk, we have minus y times by minus 4. And the 2 negatives make a positive again, so we have plus 4y. We now move our sticky finger one final time. It's now resting on plus 2. Going through the right chunk again, we have 2 times x, which is 2x. Then we have 2 times minus y, which is minus 2y. 2 times 3xy becomes 6xy. And finally, 2 times minus 4 is minus 8. We're at the end of the right chunk now, and there's nowhere else for our sticky finger to go, So we have our initial answer. Let's check how many items we have. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that is what we expected with 3 items in the first chunk and 4 items in the second chunk. To reach our final answer, all we need to do is collect like terms. Let's go through them and tick them off as we use each one so we don't make any mistakes. First, we have this x squared. There are no other x squared terms. This may look like it's an x squared term, but it's got a y too. So it's actually an x squared y term, and it can't be mixed. Hence, let's tick off our x squared and write it down. Our next term is minus xy. Looking through our answer, I can see another xy term here, and actually here. Whilst this is written as yx, it's the same as xy. If you think about it, numbers can be multiplied in any order, so 5 times 3 is the same as 3 times 5. So y times x is the same as x times y. So, if we look at all our xy terms, we have minus 1 here, another minus 1 here, and plus 6 here. That equates to plus 4xy. And let's remember to tick them off so we don't double count them. I can see the next one is the only x squared y term, so I'll write that down and tick it off. And I'm now on to 4x. The only other x term I can see is plus 2x, and minus 4x plus 2x is minus 2x. Next term is y squared, there are no others, so I'll write it and tick it. And minus 3xy squared is on its own too, so let's write that. Now we're on to plus 4y, and there's a minus 2y here. So 4 minus 2 is 2y, and tick them off. And we only have one remaining unticked term, which is minus 8. That's all of them ticked off and collected together where possible. So we have our final answer. It might look complicated and messy, and you might have collected things in a slightly different order, but hopefully you've reached the same overall answer, which is correct. Massive congratulations if you have, and do have another go if you didn't quite get it right, or leave me a comment below if you're really struggling. I appreciate we went in at the deep end, but I really wanted to show you that no matter how big or small the question, the sticky finger approach is an easy way forward, and I hope that you agree. By the way, if your syllabus extends beyond this and you want to see how the sticky finger method works with 3 or more sets of brackets, then do check out our video covering that. Otherwise, please remember to hit that subscribe button and take a look at our other videos. Now, go and wash that honey off your hands. Until next time, I'll see thee.